Have you ever built a smart contract wallet only to have someone drain all the funds with a clever trick? One common pitfall is using tx.origin for authorization. Security experts warn that relying on tx.origin in permission checks can be a serious vulnerability. In fact, OWASP explicitly calls it out. An attacker can chain contracts to impersonate the original sender and hijack the contract's funds. In this video, we'll break down msg.sender versus tx.origin in plain English, show a real Solidity example of the vulnerability, and explain how an attacker exploits it. By the end, you'll know how to avoid this costly mistake and write safer smart contracts. Imagine Alice, an externally owned account, or EOA, calls contract A, which in turn calls contract B. In contract B, msg.sender is contract A's address, whereas tx.origin is Alice's address, the original initiator of the transaction. In other words, msg.sender always refers to the immediate caller of the function, and tx.origin refers to the original external account at the very start of the transaction. msg.sender, the address of contract or user that called this function. If Alice calls contract A and contract A calls contract B, then in B, msg.sender is equal to contract A's address. tx.origin, the original EOA that started the transaction, it never changes through the call chain. In our example, in contract B, tx.origin is equal to Alice's. Think of tx.origin as the person who first mailed a letter and msg.sender as the mailman who just delivered it. No matter how many postmen hand the letter off, the original author stays the same, tx.origin, while each handoff has a different courier, msg.sender. Let's see how this difference plays out in code. Consider a simple wallet contract. One address is set as the owner and only that owner can transfer funds. Here's a vulnerable version that mistakenly uses tx.origin. In this code, the constructor correctly stores owner equal to msg.sender, but in the transfer function, the check requires tx.origin equal to owner is problematic. It seems to ensure only the owner can call transfer, but because it uses tx.origin, it will also accept calls that come through another contract as long as the original sender is the owner. But how the exploit works. The attack works like a phishing chain. Here are the steps an attacker would take. Deploy a malicious contract. The attacker writes a contract that, when it receives any ether, immediately calls the vulnerable wallet's transfer on behalf of the attacker. For example, this attacker contract has a function called exploit. When someone calls this function, it internally calls wallet address.transfer and requests to send the entire balance of the wallet contract to the attacker's address. Even though the wallet is being called by another contract, the call succeeds because the original transaction was started by the owner. Trick the owner into calling the malicious contract. The attacker might disguise this contract as something harmless, a multi-sig, a token sale, etc., and get the owner to send a small transaction to it. Trigger the vulnerable call. When the owner, Alice, sends ether to the attacker contract, the attacker contract's code runs and calls wallet.transfer attacker amount under the hood. Critically, at this moment, the original transaction sender, tx.origin, is Alice's address, so the wallet's require check passes. Funds are stolen. Since tx.origin equal to owner, the wallet believes the owner authorized the transfer. It sends all its balance to the attacker's address, draining the wallet. The attacker now owns the stolen funds. Marcus Schick from Ethereum Stack Exchange explains this risk clearly. Malicious contracts can manipulate tx.origin to impersonate the victim and withdraw their funds. In short, by making the owner originate the transaction, even indirectly, the attacker bypasses the owner-only check. How to fix it? The fix is straightforward. Use msg.sender for permission checks, not tx.origin. Always verify the immediate caller. For example, the safe version of our wallet would be this way. Even if a malicious contract is involved, msg.sender would be the address of that contract, not the original owner. The check fails and the exploit is blocked. OWASP's Smart Contract Security Guide also recommends this. Always rely on msg.sender for authentication and authorization. Likewise, Finkster notes that switching to require msg.sender equal to owner stops the attack, because in the attacker scenario, msg.sender isn't the owner. Best practices. Use access control libraries like OpenZeppelin's Ownable, which correctly use msg.sender. Audit your code for any tx.origin uses. In most cases, they should be removed or replaced. If you really need to prevent other contracts from calling, for example, only an EOA can call, a common pattern is require text.origin equal to msg.sender, which ensures there's no intermediate contract. But use this carefully, as it also blocks legitimate contract-based wallets. By following these guidelines, you avoid this common mistake. In summary, msg.sender and tx.origin may sound similar, but they behave very differently. msg.sender is the immediate caller. tx.origin is the original transaction sender. Using tx.origin for authorization opens the door to phishing-style attacks, allowing a malicious contract to hijack your contract by relaying calls. Always use msg.sender, the direct caller, for permission checks. By understanding this difference and updating any flawed code, you can keep your smart contracts secure. Remember, even one line of code can be the difference between safety and a hack. Stay cautious, keep learning, and always test your contracts thoroughly. Thank you for watching, and happy coding.